And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as I mentioned, we've spoken with your opponents, and one of them, Mr. Hoffman, actually had some fairly biting things to say about you. I'd like to play that clip for you so you can respond.
Because Bill Owens is another politician that made promises to the people in order to get elected, and once he got elected, he broke those promises. And Liz, he did that within the first hour of being on the floor in Congress, where he voted for the health care bill. And unfortunately, Bill Owens is exactly what I predicted last year. He's Nancy Pelosi's puppet, and he's going to vote for the Democrat agenda, which is spend and tax, and regulate.
Okay, so that clearly is Mr. Hoffman saying that he believes you are too liberal for the district and too much of a puppet, if you will, his words, controlled by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. What's your response to that?
Well, I'm having a little trouble with my earpiece, but first let me say that clearly his reference to the health care bill, I announced the Friday before the election that I was going to vote in favor of the health care bill, so everyone who voted for me knew exactly where I stood on that issue. The second question about being involved, how I vote, I think if you look at my voting record, I have voted opposite from the party on a number of significant occasions, including twice not to increase the debt ceiling. I voted against financial disclosure. Financial reform. I voted very clearly in the interest of this district and the interest of this district only.
I think that what he was specifically referring to regarding the health care bill was that you said that you wouldn't raise taxes, and he feels that the health care bill is going to end up being more expensive for residents of the 23rd as New Yorkers and people in the nation generally speaking. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't think that that's the conclusion of the CBO. I don't think that's the conclusion of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation report, on which I relied very heavily in reaching my decision to vote in favor of the bill. I think that we have to be very careful when we look at those issues, but my view is we have not voted to increase taxes. In fact, we're now seeing some very good trends in the healthcare industry where people are finding that utilization is declining, which will ultimately cause premiums to be reduced. We've seen the United Health come out with a program where they propose that they can reduce the Medicare portion of the bill by something like $219 billion on a $440 billion line item. We're seeing private industry working to really develop programs which are going to make the health care bill work and ultimately reduce costs for all Americans. You
know, it's interesting. You are running with the Working Families Party line this year, as you did in the special election when you were first elected. Is that correct?
That's right.
And you know, the party, it's a liberal-backed party, it's a labor party, and they have a number of liberal positions, for example, increasing taxes on the rich. I mean, what's your feeling about the platform of the Working Families Party, and do you think that it adequately represents the district as a whole?
Well, I think that the Working Families Party does represent a segment of the district. I have repeatedly said last year during the election that I was in favor of allowing the Bush tax cuts to expire for the wealthy. So I'm not sure that in that particular case our positions aren't aligned. And I think for the majority of people in this district, that position is something which they would agree with.
Where exactly could you point that, say, in the next year or so, with things that are coming down the pike, that you would be breaking with leadership, assuming that you are reelected?
I'm not sure that I see anything specific that I could point to in the way of legislation that I would be breaking with leadership on. What I can tell you, however, is that I will always look at what the issues are for the district and decide, based upon those issues, how they are going to impact this district. Not what leadership asked me to do, but what I think is in the best interest of the district and the communities in the district.
Now, you know, one of the things that we've seen that's become an issue, and a number of things actually are not specifically related to the 23rd district, but nevertheless are playing out as the Democrats head into this, what is expected to be a rather difficult midterm season. One of them is Charlie Rangel. He's a colleague of yours. What is your feeling about him? He's facing 13 ethics charges. Do you think he should resign?
Well, let me first tell you that I think that process should move along as rapidly as possible and come to a conclusion. Let me also tell you that that's not an issue being raised by my constituents. My constituents talk to me about jobs, about the debt and the deficit. They're not talking to me about things outside the district. They're very focused on what is impacting them, and that primarily is jobs. Again, that's something that I think is critical both for this district and around the country.
Yeah, I understand that. Of course, jobs and the economy are becoming a huge issue in this election. The problem is that you have the Republicans hitting you and criticizing you for things that are happening outside the district. For example, again with Charlie Rangel, he's been used as an example that the Democratic leadership in the House did not keep to its pledge to rapidly drain the swamp of corruption in Washington. So I think that it is, although I understand that residents are not particularly, may not even know who Charlie Rangel is, it is a relevant issue, A, because Republicans are asking it, and B, because it speaks to the whole, if you will, potential corruption problem that's going on in Washington. So just to reiterate, I'm not clear on your position regarding Mr. Rangel. I know you want it to move forward quickly, but do you think he should resign or perhaps not run for re-election?
Well, I think that those are choices that Mr. Rangel has to make himself. What I want to have happen is the process that is in place in the House should move forward rapidly. The recommendation should come forward from the House Ethics Committee, and we should take action on it.
And the other issue that is outside the district, very far outside the district actually, that I don't believe you've taken a stand on yet is the mosque and Islamic Center that's proposed for construction near Ground Zero. What's your position on that? Do you think it should be relocated? Should it be moved? Should it be built? What's your view?
Well, I think a day or so ago, the imam's wife indicated that they were amenable to the idea of moving the mosque to a new location. I think that's an excellent outcome here, but I also want to indicate that we are a country based on a constitution, and they do have a constitutional right after the local authorities have determined that they have permission to do this. We have to be very careful that we make sure that we abide by the Constitution. That said, when someone exercises rights, they have responsibilities, and I would prefer to see this built in another location.
Do you think the president was right to weigh in on this issue? There are some people in your party who were a little concerned that once he weighed in, it nationalized it, and it had Democrats like yourself who might be facing difficult re-elections on the hot seat.
Well, basically, I believe this is primarily a local issue. And I was very comfortable to allow that process to go on in New York City and allow them to make that determination. But as I said, now that it's become more nationalized, I would hope that they would exercise some discretion and build the mosque at another location.
Another issue that's been brought up again by Mr. Hoffman is Arizona and the immigration bill there, or the immigration law there, excuse me. I'm just curious what your position is on that. I know obviously, again, it's an issue that's playing out in Arizona. However, Democrats were going to be supposedly pushing forward on immigration reform in Washington, and we've yet to see that occur.
And I think I agree that that's a problem, that we have not moved forward responsibly in terms of coming up with a total reform of the immigration policy. Ultimately, as you know, we live along the Canadian border. We have a very good relationship with Canada. Our immigration system, I think, functions extremely well. We also have a significant number of farmers and other agricultural groups like apple growers who need migrant labor in order to pick their crops and work on the farms. We need a bill which is going to address those issues. I think there's some danger in the Arizona law moving forward because we could wind up with 50 separate pieces of immigration legislation, which I think would not be beneficial. I also think it's very important to note that the Obama administration has deported more illegal immigrants this year than the Bush administration did in the prior 8, which means they're hitting the problem where it really exists. Why do immigrants come across? Because they want to work. If we're picking up people who are working illegally and shipping them out of the country, I think that's the method we should be using to stem the flow of illegal immigration.
Congressman, when you ran in the special election, your election was very, paid a lot of attention to by the nation, and the White House in particular came down in support of you. I'm just curious, do you think that President Obama will be endorsing you, and do you want his endorsement? Because, his poll numbers aren't what they used to be.
Well, I think that my view is if the president chooses to endorse me, I would be very happy with that. But let me tell you that I think the critical piece here is for me to be out visiting, meeting with my constituents, listening to them, learning from them, and talking to them about the issue that they think is most important, which I have to tell you goes back to the jobs question. And that's really what we're focused on in this campaign, is finding out how we can facilitate the creation of jobs throughout this district.
And just before I let you go, I'm curious, do you have a preference? Which one of these guys do you think would be more difficult for you to run against, Doheny or Hoffman?
No, I have no preference. That's up to the Republican Party to decide. I'm very comfortable because I'm out doing my job, as I said, talking to people, visiting with them, having conversation, learning from them. And again, mostly we're talking about how are we going to solve this jobs problem, and that's what I'm about.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure talking with you. Hope to catch up with you soon.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.